All right, Miami Dolphins.
Moving on to 35 here. Oh. Two more. Almost done. Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I'm Tyler here with my brother Ryan. Today we're breaking down the Miami Dolphins 2024 season. We are going to give the absolute floor and then the absolute possible ceiling for the Miami Dolphins this year. So not going to you're going to stay tuned to the end of the video. Before we get into it, though, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the Tracy Take, and also tackle that bell to get notified when new videos come out. We have content coming out every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And once when the season starts, we're going to have weekly prediction videos of all the Dolphins games that you're not going to want to miss. So like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also ring that bell. And Ryan, before we get into the schedule, let's quickly kind of recap where the Dolphins improved on the most. I think the biggest thing to me is I think they did improve. I think they just incrementally improved. I think they tried to broaden out their capabilities as best as they could on both sides of the ball. Last year felt like they were just a one-trick pony, and it was just speed. And kind of as the season wore down, you had some key injuries on the defensive side of the ball. Then when they got into colder weather games, that game didn't translate nearly as well. So I think improving the offensive line a little bit more. I think getting a guy like Odell Beckham Jr., I know he's on the older side of his career, but I think he's going to provide a bigger impact than some people project. Because just in case if one of those guys goes down for a week, like Tyreek Hill did for 1 week, it's going to be a more consistent option, I feel, for this team, while he also then does kind of fit the mold as well. I think defensively as well, beefing up the defensive interior, getting a lot of key guys in there as well. Addressing the secondary also, getting guys like Jordan Poyer, Mark Spank, and Will Fuller. Just some good veteran players that they can come in and at minimum be rotational pieces and help bring some guys in there. But I want to throw it over to you as a Patriots fan. What do you think the Dolphins improved on the most in the 2024 season? Offseason.
I think this offensive line should be improved. I think you look Patrick Paul, getting him in the draft, Jack Driscoll, Aaron Brewer, and those guys I think should be at the very least good depth for this offensive line, and hopefully create some competition to improve it. And then also I really liked Malik Washington and Taj Washington. That is going to be confusing as hell watching them on the same team because they're both like 5'10", 5'9", 5'10", little shifty speedsters, very similar to their other two receivers that they have. But it's just that offense is going to be going at 1,000 miles an hour. And if you're playing the Dolphins, you're not ready to run, you're going to lose. Like they're going to turn every game into a track meet. So other than that, I'm very interested to see what this defense looks like. They got Shaq Barrett in free agency after he left Tampa. He's old. I think he's like mid-30s. They got Chop Robinson. I was not a big fan of Chop Robinson. I think you go look at his productivity against top-tier competition. And I believe he had like one quarterback pressure against Ohio State, Michigan, and there was one other team in that mix. And like his total stat line was one quarterback pressure. And not quite what you want to see from a top edge prospect, but still, I think that'll be interesting. Getting Neville Gallimore, Jonathan Harris, Benito Jones, Tahir Tart, all those guys I think will be interesting. And then you got to throw Calais Campbell in there as well. So just figuring out that rotation. They got a lot of guys in the room that can make plays. It's just how will it all kind of lay out?
Well, and that was the thing last year is it was he had a couple of key guys that went down, especially a key portion of the season. Like week 13 was when Jalen Phillips went down, and then Bradley Chubb got hurt and like a no-nothing quarter against the Ravens in like week 16 or 17. And so, but I think you go and get a guy, especially too, like Calais Campbell's the guy that sticks out to me the most. It is just because of, I mean, he was with Atlanta last year, and he was by far, he's just a ginormous human being. Like it's like he's going to bring so much to this team, and that's just where if they can stay healthy and they can click, I think they're going to be more broad on what they can stop and also what they can do offensively, because they're going to have that speed, but I think there's also going to be a little bit more of a force that kind of comes along with it. And so that's what's going to be interesting with this team, because they're going to need that come January, going to need that come February. Well, if they make it February, there's only one game in February. And so I know everybody watching this video want to be playing in February. But in general, though, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this team looks, because I think there's going to be a little bit more of a physical presence to them as well. Like obviously we know the speed, but I think there's going to be a little more of a physical presence, and so going to be curious to see how that works overall for the team. Especially too, because we mentioned the offensive line. I know people might be thinking like they were one of the top running teams last year, and they had a good zone run blocking scheme. But I think just getting better offensive line. I think they just improved in that area, like with guys like Aaron Brewer. And then who's the other guy? Then they got who else did they get?
Jack Driscoll, Patrick Paul.
Yeah, and so I thought there was somebody else, or maybe they re-signed. It was Patrick Paul that you're talking about, just a young offensive lineman that they can improve on. So it's going to be fun to watch. I mean, Miami is always a fun team to watch. I mean, they can just put up the scores. So let's get into the schedule here. We got a fun start to the season. So week 1 hosting Jacksonville, week 2 hosting Buffalo on Thursday Night Football, week 3 at Seattle, week 4 hosting Tennessee on Monday Night Football, week 5 at New England, and then week 6 is a bye. So 5 games in this first 6-game stretch here. I'll say, I mean, I think they could go 5-0 during the stretch. This would not surprise me at all, especially to week 1 at Jacksonville. I could see that being something similar to what the Chargers game was like last year, where it's just an absolute. Both defenses are still trying to figure some stuff out, and so both offenses then just come in and just light up the scoreboard. So I think they can beat Buffalo, especially too since it's going to be early on in the season. Miami's going to have a lot more of that speed, while I think Buffalo's going to still be trying to figure out some stuff. Seattle is just a fringe playoffs. Like they're just a good team that I think can beat anybody, but probably not. If you look at a team like Miami. And so then Tennessee and New England, I think they can beat as well, even though Tennessee did beat Miami last year. So I think 5-0 is a realistic ceiling, and so I don't know if you agree with that. But then what do you think also your floor would be for Miami?
Yeah, I think their floor, Buffalo's given them problems in the past. I think Seattle has shown the ability to win shootouts. And yeah, even then, I think their floor is probably 3-2. Those are the only 2 teams in this mix I could really see beating them. I guess maybe Tennessee, but especially with how Miami starts, I think 3-2 is probably their floor.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, I think that'd be worst case scenario against some of these teams. Is like I can see Buffalo, or like maybe they lose then one against Jacksonville or Seattle. But anything worse than that, it's just hard for me to see just with the way Miami plays. And so the next set of 6 games: week 7 at Indy, week 8 hosting Arizona, week 9 at Buffalo, week 10 at Los Angeles on playing the Rams on Monday Night Football, week 11 hosting the Raiders, week 12 hosting New England. And so I will say it helps that 2 of their 3 road games are going to be in a dome. And the one's in Los Angeles, so weather-wise, it wouldn't matter too much. But as we get later on into some of these seasons, just when you go up north for this Miami team, this is where like how they improved in the offseason, is that going to translate then into future wins as well? I think it helps out that our road games are going to be in the dome, so it's a more controlled environment. But once again, I think best case scenario is, I mean, maybe they lose to Buffalo. I'll say best case scenario, like I think if they lose one game between either Buffalo or the Rams, but they win the rest, I think go 5-1. I think that's extremely realistic. But worst case scenario, I will say, I think there are some teams that I think can give them some trouble here. And so I think worst case scenario could be 3-3 during the stretch here. Maybe maybe even 2-4 if things are going bad. Like I think Indy's going to be solid. I think Arizona is going to be improved. There's going to have some fits. Actually, I think Arizona's defense is still a little bit weaker. I think they should be able to throw all over them. So I don't know. Do you think 2-4 is a
I think three and
possibility, or do you
three.
think 3-3 is the
I
better
think
one?
3-3 is definitely more possible. Especially this is still in Miami's. I think you look at the pattern over the last two seasons. Miami's usually pretty solid until week 10, week
Yeah.
11, and then that's when I think you start to see the dip. So all in all, I think 3-3 is probably the floor. 5-1 be the ceiling there. But let's move on to the last block of 6 games. Tough 6 game stretch here. At Green Bay on Thursday Night Football. I believe that's the Thanksgiving game, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the Thanksgiving night game.
Yeah.
Then you have the Jets with that good defense there. At Houston is a tough place to play. Then you have San Francisco, another really good team. At Cleveland, just a tough late December or early January game on Sunday Night Football. And then at the Jets, another January game that just Miami has really struggled in these later season outdoor cold weather games. And I think usually we do the ceiling first. I'm going to start here with the floor. I could really see like a 1-5 finish to this season for them because at Green Bay, at Houston, at Cleveland, at New York, all of those I think are going to be really tough matchups. And then San Francisco and the Jets at home, those are some really good defenses. I could see Miami just potentially outpacing them. But even then, I don't think either of those games are locks late in the
I
year.
I think to me, like their win would be New York Jets at home in Week
Yeah.
14. But I agree with you. That's gonna be my thing. Is gonna. I mean, you're going up to Lambeau in late November. You're
Yeah.
going up. I mean, Houston in general is just a really good team. San Francisco just a really good team. Then
Hmm.
you go up to Cleveland, that's right on the water in January at night, and then the Jets game as well, right by the water up in New York. And this is where it's one just in general. These are all on paper all Super Bowl contenders. I think maybe the Jets not so much, but I put Green Bay, Houston, San Francisco up there, and then Cleveland on paper should be as well. So I this is where I can agree with you. I think 1-5. I think their ceiling, and this is what's unique, is they can beat all these teams. I feel like the Miami Dolphins team that we see in September, like if they can
Yeah.
keep that consistent, like they can beat all these teams. Will they though? I think their best case scenario is I think they maybe come out 4-2. Is they maybe lose to San Francisco, and then let's say they lose to Green Bay. In best case scenario though, then they beat all the AFC teams and help
Hmm.
them out with the tiebreaker. Um, and so I'm between 4-2 or 3-3. Like maybe they'll lose like to Houston, but in general though, they have a relatively fair schedule up until to your point week 13, and that's when I
Yeah.
think it's really tough. So you want to go 4-2 as their ceiling, and like they lose, let's say they lose the 2 NFC games.
Uh, I am gonna push back. Well, yeah, I think 4-2 is the ceiling if the team can figure out how to play in cold weather. My only thing is Tua is 0-4 in games below 40 degrees, and you're almost guaranteed below 40 degrees at Green Bay, below 40 degrees at Cleveland, and below 40 degrees at New York.
Yeah, actually, yeah, it wasn't the Week 18 Jets game. Well, that was in New England though, but so I guess it's a little bit different. But wasn't it like a blizzard and it was like 20
Yeah,
degrees?
yeah, it was a snowball.
Yeah.
But that was the Patriots and the Jets, not the Dolphins.
So that. Oh no, I know, but I'm talking about the weather
Yeah.
that they could expect up there.
Yeah.
So um, up to you. I'll go back and forth because I agree with you. I think that's a fair point as well. Like to actually, I guess to have them go and win both of those games in week 17 and 18 might be
Yeah.
tough. So actually,
Let's say 3-3 is the ceiling because I think that's a really tough matchup. Like
yeah,
I just looked it up. I was reading something interesting. They're gonna practice in about 85-degree weather, and then like the average temperature in Cleveland and in New York is like in the 20s in January,
yeah,
and so like they're gonna have over a 60-degree difference from getting on the plane to getting off,
yeah,
and especially the Cleveland games at night on the water, as you mentioned. The Jets, I think the Jets. are a matchup nightmare for them anyways. But then I think you also throw in the cold. I think 3-3 is the ceiling in these last 6 games.
Okay, well, that's where I think they really got to capitalize on that on these first 11 games that they play,
Yeah,
because through that they're 10-1 as best case scenario, but then 3-3 in the last. So that still puts them at 13-4. I think
yeah,
that buys for them at winning the division
yeah.
at minimum, if not potentially the 1 seed overall. Did you still hear me?
Yeah, what happened there?
1 second here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We'll want to edit that out. Something my computer just
Oh,
reset.
did it go to sleep?
It just like turned off for a second.
Oh,
We'll mark this down.
okay.
Just got that out. But it was like 49-30 or something. So, but okay. I'll start over the ceiling. So they really want to capitalize on those first 11 games, because best case scenario they are going to be 10-1 during that stretch, but then finish up 3-3. That still puts them at 13-4, which means they're going to probably win the division. I'd be shocked if they didn't win the division. At minimum, that's a wild card spot, but they don't want to really travel anywhere unless if it's beneath the Mason-Dixon line. That being said, actually, is Kansas City beneath the Mason-Dixon line? Because they had one of the coldest games ever. I'd have
Yeah,
to
it was
go
like
double
negative
check.
34. But
Something like that. But worst case scenario, though, is I think we had them going 3-2, right? And then 2-3. And then kind of going 1-5 in that final 6-game stretch.
yeah, I believe so.
Oh, sorry. No.
I think they were 3-3 in the middle section.
3.
I think
Yeah. Sorry. 3-3 in the middle section. So that would then put them at 7-10 worst case scenario, which I think that's possible, just because it's of what we talked about earlier, and they don't kind of diversify some of their tactics. Teams might be able to beat them earlier on. Like I can see some of these teams earlier on, like in that early section, because it's going to be tough no matter what. Those 6 games are going to be the toughest games on their schedule. But if they don't pull out games early on, like let's say they lose to Buffalo and then maybe lose to Tennessee again, like how they did last year in that first section. Then let's say they do lose a game to Indianapolis, Buffalo, and then the Rams as well. So that's 5 losses on the season through the first 9 games of there. So they're going to be 4-5 during that stretch. If they're around 500 going into that final 6-game stretch, that is going to be tough for them, I think, to pull it out, because they're going to be going up against some tough teams and some conditions that have not been favorable for them in the long run or in the past.
Yeah, and that to me, like, I am not really worried about them in the first 10 weeks. I think they should be one of the best teams in the league. Just like that's how they have been over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
What do they look like as the wear and tear of the season hits, as they have to start going to these cold weather games? And I think that's when we'll really find out if the Miami Dolphins can actually contend and get to a Super Bowl. Because I think you look, Buffalo, Kansas City, are 2 of the top teams I think that are going to be making a push. Honestly, the best thing for the Dolphins would be like if one of the dome teams in the AFC is their
They end up playing
matchup.
them.
Yeah, like if Houston does well, I think that would be a good matchup for them in the playoffs. But like that to me, like the Dolphins are a little bit of an enigma because they have had they've been a tale of 2 teams over the last couple seasons. So
that's if they can pull this out and then go 13-4 and then get home field advantage, it is going to be tough to go down there and beat them. It's also then too, because you bring up the weather. So then on the flip side, then you go look at some of these teams who, yes, a lot of them, like a team like Buffalo, they have an indoor practice facility, yes, but still, I mean, but there you go, and they're living in everyday normal temperature up in Buffalo, which is going to be in like around or below freezing. Then you go down to Miami in January, and then when it's 75 degrees and you're playing a game, that's going to be like playing 95 in September.
Yeah.
It's going to be hot to them. So there's a flip side on that home field advantage as well. It's just the way the schedule worked out. It just sucks that the final 2 games of the season are arguably the coldest stadiums, just especially too in Cleveland, like with the lake effect as well on a nighttime game. I could see that game being like another like snow
6-degree,
something like that.
Yeah.
So Miami team, I think enigma is the right word. It's going to be very unique. There's no other team in the league like them, and so how teams have to go and game plan for them. You almost, when you're building your team, you build your team against your division rivals. You don't prepare for a team like Miami unless you're in the AFC East, but you don't really prepare for them like on a week in, week out basis.
Yeah, and even if you do, it's kind of hard because then you just end up playing their game, and like they have the fastest guys in the league. You're not going to outrun them. Yeah. So it'll be really interesting to see what the Miami Dolphins are able to do in 2024. Let's go ahead and wrap this video up here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on what you think the Miami Dolphins floor and ceiling are in 2024. Let us know what you think of Tua's contract extension. Do you think he's the guy? Do you think they should have tried to find somebody else? Other than that, we will see you guys next time.